It's all about the Macro Productions.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Daylight NBC.
Jack Marius Tack Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him.
Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles in Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, Macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you're watching us on Rockfin or Rumble or listening wherever podcasts are served, thanks a million. We appreciate the support. Couldn't do it without you. If you haven't rated the show yet, we would appreciate 5 stars. If you think we've earned it, we're going to fight this stupid algorithm battle all the way to the end. The website, if you want to connect with me, macroaggressions.io is the place to do that. You can find out about the books and the podcasts and all that good stuff. The Octopus of Global Control is now available as an audiobook. So if you're you got a long trip, or you're going to get on a flight, or you're going to the gym, or you're gardening, or whatever, and you want to hear about the octopus, it's there. It's 23 hours, too. You're getting your money's worth, for sure. Big thank you to our sponsors. They make this show happen. Chemical Free Body has been with me for the last 4 years. I drink their Green 85 drink every single morning. That is no exaggeration. I buy it just the way you guys do, promo code MACRO, and I feel like it gives me everything that I'm missing out on my with regard to my diet. I get a lot of vitamins and minerals that I normally wouldn't get elsewhere, so it's good to have that as a supplement. I'm grateful that Tim James makes products that actually work. That's amazing. You'd think that that would be sort of the baseline minimum, but that is not, especially in the supplement industry. There's a lot of scammy stuff out there. Chemical Free Body makes great stuff. And if you're interested, go take a look and see what you think. The Detox Bundle is over there too. I've done that twice. That'll lean you out pretty good. So if you find something you like, use the discount code MACRO to save yourself a little bit of money. Also, thank you to our friends at Legal Shield that have been doing this for 50 years in the United States and Canada. They'll get you access to an attorney in your area for $1 a day. It's very reasonable. You can do a lot with this. You can get all kinds of documents taken care of, last will and testament, financial power of attorney, medical directive, all those things that you need that you don't want to spend a bunch of money on. You can knock it out with Legal Shield like right away. First week, for sure. I would tell you this. I would tell you to go to the website that they created just for our show, www.don'tgetpushedAround.com, and just take a look and see what you think. I mean, the ID Shield, small business plan, the documentation if you carry a gun, they have everything for that. There's a lot going on over there. So take a look, see what you think. If it's something that you need, you're going to find that it's a tremendous value. And if you don't have a last will and testament, and you don't have all these things, you got to have it, man. If something goes wrong and you die and the state gets involved in your affairs, it always ends badly. It ends badly for the people that you love the most too. You'll be gone. You won't have to deal with it. But if they have to, it's just going to add to the headache. So just get your affairs in order before this president gets us all killed. I am I am recording this episode appropriately on 4th of July. It will go out now that you're listening to it. It's well past the 4th of July. The country may be on fire by now, if I'm being totally honest. And I think that after the Biden debacle on I guess that was a debate, whatever you want to call it, it started people asking it started normies asking questions. Okay, this guy's not in charge, right? Clearly he's not in charge, right? So like, haha, that's funny. Our president isn't in charge. Well, somebody is. So who is in charge, right? That's the follow-up question. If he's not running the country, who is? Well, we know it's not Kamala Harris. She's incompetent. But you start to go, is Obama running his third term? Is he running it with the Susan Rice Trilateral Group? Probably. I mean, yes. So let me rephrase that. The answer is yes. That this is the group that's really running things, at least in the White House. I don't mean running things like around the world necessarily, but in terms of like who is, like, oh, are we going to bring Michelle Obama in and have her run? It's like, you've got Michelle Obama in there in the form of Joe Biden. It's just that it's Barack Obama with a, what did he say one time that like, they said, would you you want to do a third presidency? And he said, only if I could just put an earpiece in somebody in a microphone and I could just talk into their ear and then they could be the president. And it's like, shit, man. I think we might have that. So everybody knows Biden's not in charge. And people are worried, what happens if something actually goes wrong, right? That is not the guy that you want to have in a position of power to determine the outcome of the United States in the event that there's some catastrophe, like, I don't know, 10 million people coming across the southern border. You would want somebody in there that knew what they were doing. And it makes you think about what happened if we had an actual disaster and not a false flag, not a, but like a real one, like something, I don't know, a meteor came in, right? Or a massive earthquake. And I realized that the massive earthquake could be faked, but still, like, what if we had a massive earthquake combo tsunami that just like hit and really walloped the West Coast? You would say, what is the backup plan? What is America's contingency plan? Well, there are plans in place, and we're going to talk about them today because we need to. I was going to say we need to set everyone's mind at ease that there is a plan in the event that somebody like Joe Biden dies at the wheel. The plan isn't great, though. I mean, it's not like, oh, thank God, the plan is so much better. No, the plan is like the military takes over. But there is a plan. There is a concept called continuity of government. Have you heard about it before? If you want to we're going to talk about COG on this episode. And if this is a topic that you find yourself at the end of this wanting to go deeper into, I would highly recommend the work of Daniel List. He is, you can find him at Dark Journalist. He's done a lot of really great work on COG. In fact, I would say he's well-versed on a lot of things. That's one of his specialties. So we're going to talk about it. I mean, he's done like episode after episode on it, and he can go and get into the weeds. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep it relatively surface level. We're going to talk about some of the major things that we've experienced over the years. And we're going to wrap it up with sort of where we are today. In terms of what we can expect with continuity of government and what that looks like moving forward into, in our generation, because some of this stuff that we're gonna talk about really starts in the 70s, and it might have been relevant under Gerald Ford, and it might have been the way the world worked back then, but things have changed. The boogeyman back then was the Russians, the Soviets, and they were going to get us and they were going to nuke us, and we were all going to have to get in fallout shelters, and we have to worry about them decapitating Washington, D.C., and the head of the government is gone. Where do we relocate everyone in a nuclear attack? Well, maybe that's still relevant, and I'm sure that there are plans for that, but the boogeyman has changed over the years. It's gone from the Soviets with their ICBMs to everybody's a terrorist. They're just around the corner waiting to kill you, to now in this new century, it's more like as we press on, it's more of these invisible enemies, more in the form of viruses. So we'll get to that at the end. But continuity of government started off as a set of contingency plans in case the American government was incapacitated, from a Soviet nuclear attack. That was their whole point. But you have to understand, when continuity of government kicks in, democracy ends, right? Or whatever this is that we have. It's a constitutional republic. It ain't that either, okay? It's democracy in air quotes. But whatever. It ends when they activate COG, because then it's like all the rules get thrown out. The Constitution is put on ice because it's an emergency, right? You think of it like the way they ran the COVID op. And that is when you're really scared, when it's 2 weeks to flatten the curve, everybody stay in their house and all of that. You get people making short-term decisions because it's a 2-week thing, right? Or the Russians are, inbound ICBMs, right? So when you go to COG directives, or when you go to essentially what, like the COVID directives, you're going to find that what they demand of you is that you sacrifice long-term thinking in order to prioritize short-term thinking. And that's fine because it makes sense and it's logical. If you're in an emergency, there's no sense worrying about whether or not the phone bill is paid when your house is on fire, right? So you have to prioritize where you need to focus your efforts, and I get that. But here's the problem, is that they fully recognize that when you're in that short-term thinking mentality, you're going to make bad choices, and they want you to. Because the thing is that they want to create false choices for you. It's like, do you take this rush to market experimental vaccine, or do you quit your job because your boss won't let you in? It's like, what? Those are my only two choices? How about I'm not doing either of those, right? So but if you're scared to death, then they can get you into these decision-making patterns. And that's what COG does. COG assumes the worst, of course, and this is supposed to be for emergencies, so they're supposed to plan, train you for how to get, past this. But the problem is the people that take over during COG are the wrong people. It's the military. It's the type of people that treat this like a military operation that they have to win, right? Are you gonna win COVID? Are you gonna win against Al Qaeda? Where's the finish line? How do you determine when you've won? How do you determine when the emergency is over, when it's no longer a threat? That's the catch, right? Of course, that's the catch. And we're going to get into this because when you start looking at what has happened and how they've used these emergencies, they're not they're being exploited and abused, of course, and you would expect that because the American government is run by psychopaths. But we're gonna list off a lot of how this came to be. There's something called the National Emergencies Act, and that happened in 1976. And what this did is it laid the foundation for the Patriot Act that would come in its wake 25 years later. And it was similar. It was emergency legislation, right? And this is what it says. It says, an act to terminate certain authorities with respect to national emergencies still in effect and to provide for orderly implementation and termination of future national emergencies. Okay. Gerald Ford did this to clear up the confusion from the there were 470 provisions in various laws that had passed before 1976, and it was just like a hodgepodge of all these laws, right? And so what he did was he said that he wanted to reform the maze of statutes which had resulted from state of emergencies under the country, which had been operating for over 40 years. So what he was saying was that in 1976, they had already had 40 years of states of emergency that were just sort of like open work tickets that hadn't been officially closed over the years. And what he was saying was, let's organize this. Let's kind of consolidate it all. Let's organize it. Let's go back through there and let's have one place where we coordinate all these emergencies. If we need to keep the emergency open, we'll keep it open. But if we can close it, let's close it. But let's organize this whole thing. And one of the things that happens, this is an important thing too, because once a president declares a national emergency, there are 123 additional powers that are available to him. Okay, so it's not like you just declare an emergency and then that authorizes you to spend a little bit more money, or it authorizes you to call up the National Guard or things like that. Sure, you get to do those things too, but it also it gives you a bunch of powers, and it gives 13 additional powers to Congress as well. So when you talk about, or when you think about the mentality of these lazy bureaucrats that already think that this governing business would be a whole lot easier if it wasn't for all these fucking people telling them what to do or what they wanted, right? That if they could just rule by decree, it'd be so much easier. Well, once you kick in a national emergency, you can rule by decree, and it is a whole lot easier to govern. And so what you find is that these politicians, they never want to give it up. They never want to give up the power. Not even so much because it's like, I want to become Napoleon and stay in power forever. It's not that. It's like, it's just way easier to govern this way. I don't have to run it through this committee, and I don't have to get approval from that asshole over there who hates me. And I don't have to do this or that. I can just say, we're doing it. And we're doing it. And that could be presidential, we're doing it. That could be military, we're doing it. It could be congressional, whatever it is. These people are going to have an easier time pushing through the things that they want, or that, let's be honest, that their donors want. And they're not going to have to fight as hard or be as strategic or whatever in order to make it work. So national emergencies are awesome for people in government. They love them. Now, you and I get freaked out by them and we go, oh no, a national emergency, that sounds terrible. It sounds terrible to us because we're about to have our rights stripped away from us. But if you're in government, first of all, you'll be protected by against the emergency. You are a priority because you're in government and you're important. But also, things open up. Options open up to you that you never had before. And because of that, you can just kind of wave a magic wand and make things happen. So it'd be great, I think. I mean, I can understand why these people would want that too. I mean, there's a lot of machinery in the legislative process that is probably super annoying to deal with. Not even so much nefarious that you want to get around it. You just don't want to deal with the paperwork and the bullshit, right? And I can certainly understand that, But again, there is a process in place, and if you govern exclusively because you create emergencies, then you're just lazy at governing. What this National Emergencies Act in 1976 did was it changed three things. It required the president to issue formal declarations when a national emergency exists. You have to come out and declare it. It's required the president to cite the statutory powers he would use during a national emergency. I'm calling a national emergency. It's official. That's rule number one. And then number two, he has to say, and during this national emergency, these are the powers I'm going to use. So you have to declare it, and then you have to be specific about which powers you're going to use. And then third is that it allowed Congress to oppose the presidential declarations and or the powers he might cite. So first you have to declare it, then you have to declare what laws you're going to use during it, and then Congress has to say, yeah, it's fine. We're good with it. And if Congress has a problem with it, then they can fight you with it. But depending on how your Congress is set up, whether it's loyal to the president or not, number three on this list may or may not be an issue. If you've got a Congress that is party aligned with the president, they'll just make it happen too. So in 1985, they got into a legal dispute and changed the laws to allow Congress to end national emergency declarations using joint resolutions. So these national emergency declarations were going out kind of willy-nilly. And in 85, Congress was allowed to just be like, listen, we have to be able to have a say in when these things end too. It can't just be you, the president. I mean, because you'll keep it going forever. So we have to be able to have a say in that. Just to put this in perspective, in case you're wondering, when I say that there's been quite a few national emergencies declared, there have been 62 national emergencies declared since 1976. With 34 of these still ongoing and only 28 officially ended, and this as of 2019. Now, COVID clearly added to these numbers. So I would say that these numbers have an asterisk next to them, because you're going to need to take a look at them after COVID, because we know that there was a lot of nonsense going on during that. Let's move on to the Patriot Act, shall we? The Patriot. Did you know that Patriot, the word Patriot and Patriot Act is an acronym? I know. You're all very surprised, and it's a stupid one too. You know, they just were like, let's call something patriotic, and then we'll work backwards, and we'll figure out all the words that go with the P's and the A's and the T's, and because you go, oh, Patriot. What does it stand for? Providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. Patriot Act. So stupid. The least patriotic bit of legislation in the history of the United States, I might add, as well. So, again, when it comes to naming the bills, if it was like whatever the name of the bill is, it does the exact opposite. If it's like the Child Safety Act, you can be assured it's a white van driving around from playground to playground. You know what I mean? It's that. So the Patriot Act, because it's patriotic, of course, it allowed for sneak and peek searches, double hop phone record checks, roving wiretaps, access to business records, racial profiling, a massive overreach, zero transparency, full surveillance, all the stuff that patriots love, all that shit, like full surveillance. They love that stuff, don't you know? God, it's so annoying. It was signed, September 11th, 2001. Patriot Act, which is over 1,000 pages long, was signed October 26th, 2001. So it was created, typed up, written, done in 6 weeks, and it was signed. It was clearly written much earlier, right? I mean, it was obviously written much earlier. And the people that are even in government, when asked about the Patriot Act, the guys that are like deep state guys, they're like, hey man, did you have that thing like in the top drawer, like waiting to get dusted off? They're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I just assumed you were going to lie about it. They're like, no, we've had that thing written for a while. So they don't even deny it. Oh, and by the way, the follow-up question is there a Patriot Act for the internet? And the answer was yes. So take that for whatever you want. The Patriot Act was designed to be used for, air quotes, emergencies. But, it has been rolled over and authorized every single year. So we get into this world where it's not about your freedoms. It's not about your rights. It's not about things like that. It's about surveillance. And the Patriot Act was the greatest surveillance operation for the American deep state that they could have ever possibly asked for. Now, a lot of this stuff, again, you have to also know that this is like the legalization of all of these things: spying, wiretaps, access to business records, racial profile. It's the legalization of this. I want to be crystal clear. I don't want anyone to think that none of this happened before October 26, 2001, and that all of a sudden, magically on October 27th, we decided to get into the phone tapping, sneak and peek searches and all that stuff. No. I'm just saying it became legal from that point forward. It has always been happening. That wasn't in dispute. They won't admit that it was happening, but we have WikiLeaks. we have access. We have files. We know what was happening. I mean, it's not debatable. The thing is that they needed they wanted an opportunity. They created an opportunity, let's be honest, with 9/11 in order to get into that short-term emergency thinking. So that you could say, help, help, we're all going to die unless we do X, Y, and Z immediately. Don't think about it. There'll be a revolution on the streets Monday morning unless we get this $700 billion for Wall Street. Remember that? So again, they want to scare the shit out of you and get a decision immediately. That's what the Patriot Act was. They have a... So one of the things that came out of the Patriot Act is something called a National Security Letter, NSL, of course. And these are issued by FBI agents, and they are issued without a judge's approval. That's one of the interesting things that came in the wake of the Patriot Act, was that you didn't need a judge to sign off on these things. You just needed an FBI agent to need it, to want it, to say, I have a reason to believe that this person might be up to no good, so I'm going to need to take a look at their phone records, bank records, credit history, stuff. And these letters were issued from 2003 through 2006. The FBI, I'm going to read off these statistics. They're wild. The FBI, so 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006. We're talking about a 4-year period. We're talking about a 4-year period during the Iraq War, by the way. And in the aftermath of 9/11, where mistakes were made. The FBI issued 192,499 national security letters. 192. I'm going to round up. I'm going to add one more to the list and make it an even 192,500. Would you like to take a wild guess how many terror convictions came out of the 192,000 national security letters that were issued by the FBI? One whole conviction. It was probably Abu Hafsim Nadal getting a jaywalking ticket or something, right? It was this 190. If I went up to bat 192,499 times and I got one hit, you would send me down to the minor leagues. Holy shit. This is from Senator Ron Wyden in 2011. This is going to be a funny quote. I mean, not funny, haha, but I want to deliver a warning. When the American people find out how their government has secretly interpreted the Patriot Act, they will be stunned and they will be angry. That's Senator Ron Wyden in 2011. He went on to continue to authorize the Patriot Act every year. Well, that's some stance you took, Ron, you fucking asshole. Yeah. Oh, you're going to be so surprised at how awful this is. Did you vote for it? Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, but I mean, yeah, but you'd still be surprised. You'd be surprised at how controlled I am. One of the things that these national security letters would give the feds was phone records, computer records, credit history, and banking history. Now, this wasn't just like the top levels of the FBI guys having access to this. 34,000 law enforcement officers had access to this information. So everybody that wanted access to your phone records, your computer history, your credit history, your banking history, just your personal stuff about your money, who you talk to on the phone, who you interact with on the internet, what websites you go to, just so you know. All that information fully available to 34,000 different cops. And we know how great cops are with information, right? They're certainly not looking up their ex-girlfriend or something like that. By the way, this information that they pulled on this was kept and never destroyed. Specifically, never destroyed. On top of this, if you are one of the unfortunate 192,499 people that received a national security letter, one of the things that you'll find in the Patriot Act, you'll figure this out one way or another, is that it is illegal for anybody who receives one of these letters to tell anybody that they received one of these letters. How about that? If you find out that they're spying on you, it is illegal for you to tell anybody that you found out about it. By the way, these gag orders have been ruled unconstitutional in multiple states, but they still go on. Okay. So this is, again, it's so patriotic. You're not allowed to tell anybody that you're under surveillance, because we're just a bunch of patriots out here. We're just tying yellow ribbons around the old oak trees, don't you know? From a shorter time frame, 2003 through 2005, the FBI issued. So now we're 2003, 2004, 2005. So we're only 3 years. We're not 4 years. The FBI issued 143,074 national security letters. Again, 143,000 letters. And this resulted in a grand total of 53 criminal referrals. All right, well, now we're getting somewhere. And they're referrals, I don't know. What were the 53 criminal referrals for? Would we catch Al-Qaeda? Did we catch Al-Qaeda in Baltimore trying to come in through the harbor or something? Well, not really. We sent out 143,000 letters to these people that were definitely up to no good. We wound up getting 53 criminal referrals from it, but really, those were 17 of them were money laundering, 17 of them were immigration, 19 of them were fraud, and literally 0 of them were terrorism. Terrorism, there is a supply and demand imbalance with regard to terrorism. There is a far greater demand for it by the United States government than there is a supply. And therefore, they make up the difference by creating the terrorism themselves. I mean, you can sit around and wait for 19 Arab hijackers with box cutters to plot and plan a 9/11 style attack, or you can go do it yourself. And in 2010, the FBI pulled 3,970 sneak and peeks. Of those, again, we're going to round up 4,000 sneak and peeks. 76% of them were drug related, 24% were deemed other, and less than 1% were terror related. They're not looking for terrorists. You know why they're not looking for terrorists? Because they are the terrorists and they know it. It's like when the husband murders his wife who says she went out jogging and she never came home, and he murders the wife, and then everyone goes, "Hey, why aren't you out there with everybody else looking in the woods for the wife? We're having the big candlelight vigil where everyone's out in the woods and you're home playing video games." Why? You know why? Because he knows you're not going to find the wife. The reason why the federal government isn't worried about terrorists everywhere is because they know you're not going to find the terrorists. They are the terrorists. Okay. The Patriot Act isn't to prevent terrorism. They're the ones that perpetrated the terrorism. The Patriot Act is to strip you of your rights so that they can spy on you legally. They were doing it before, but legally they can spy on you. And the reason why you agreed to the Patriot Act was because you were afraid that the beatings were going to continue in the form of airplanes flying into buildings, unless we did something. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, there are airplanes flying into buildings. Reaction, oh my God, we're all going to die unless we give up, help us, daddy government. Solution, you got to give up your rights. We're going to write the Patriot Act. We're going to be able to spy on all of you, but at least we'll be able to catch those terrorists. Did you catch the terrorists? Well, we issued 143,000 national security letters and we caught 0. We issued 192,499 national security letters and we led to 1 terror conviction. And then in 2010, we pulled 4,000 sneak and peeks and we got 0. So you tell me, how are we doing? How's it looking? Not great, right? Also, one of the things that the Patriot Act did, which was unbelievably diabolical, was that it legally changed America to the battlefield and the homeland. So we are the homeland. We are the homeland, you see. And because we are the homeland, then anything that happens in the homeland is technically legally happening on the battlefield. So if they designate you a terrorist in America, let's say you're just Gene, the guy in Kansas City who has a problem with the Biden administration and put on Facebook, "I hope Joe Biden dies." Gene in Kansas City could be legally deemed a terrorist for his terroristic ways of thinking. If Gene is legally deemed a terrorist, he is a terrorist operating on the battlefield in the homeland. And if the feds get involved and slap that legal designation on him, he now has no rights at all. He has no rights to a trial. He has no rights for his family to be told where he is. He can literally be black bagged coming home from work, parking his car in his driveway, and a van pulls up and they grab him and they put a black bag on his head and they drag him in the van. And next thing you know, he's on a cargo plane on his way to Guantanamo Bay, where he is held, detained. Poor Gene, the guy who just thought Biden was a fuck up on Facebook, is now an enemy combatant operating in the homeland on the battlefield as a domestic terrorist. So that's from the Patriot Act. And that's scary. That's scary shit. Let's talk a little bit about 9/11. Let's talk about continuity of government on 9/11. Okay, because there's a lot there. In the 1980s, in order to understand 9/11, we got to go back a decade. The 1980s, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Casey. These lunatics were talking about the suspension of the Constitution, the imposition of martial law, turning control over to FEMA, and the surveillance of political dissenters. Okay, that's what they wanted. This is what they wanted. They were devising a plan in which America would go into a continuity of government scenario in which FEMA would take over. Okay, Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job over there running FEMA, with a warehouse filled with bottled water that just can't seem to get to the people that need it. And so when you understand that COG in the 80s comes out of that Reagan, Bush, Casey, White House and everything sort of associated with that, it sort of makes the 2000s make a little bit more sense with regard to Dick Cheney being involved. Dick Cheney was deeply involved in running things on 9/11. And he, as you know, W. Bush was intentionally put out of the way. He was sent down to Florida so that he couldn't get involved in anything. Cheney was at the White House, and Cheney was involved in running things from the East Wing, from the POC, the Presidential Emergency Operations Center that's down in the basement of the East Wing, and that is where we had the situation with Norman Mineta's story. Have you heard that? That's the "Do the Orders Still Stand" story. Okay, the scenario before, but let's talk a little bit about this, because this is something that has created some debate, conversation. I think it's a worthy debate and conversation to have about what exactly Norman Mineta was referring to when he said the orders. When he was talking about the story about "Do the Orders Still Stand?" So the story is this: they're down in the POC, and Cheney's there, and Norman Mineta is there, and Norman Mineta is relaying this story to the 9/11 Commission. This is the reason why we know about it, and so the way Mineta tells this story is that this young airman comes in and says to Cheney, "Do the orders still stand?" To which Cheney whipped his neck around and screamed at him, "Have you heard anything to the contrary?" Well, then of course the orders still stand. Now, follow me here, because the assumption is that the order was to shoot down the plane. That is not what the order was. And I'm going to challenge this, because I'm going to come at this and say it's the exact opposite. And let me explain why I think the order was not to shoot the plane down. The order was to allow the plane to hit. And the reason why you know that is because it was such an unusual order. You have to think of this from a military standpoint, right? This is a young guy who's talking to the Vice President of the United States, who is Darth Vader. Not exactly the type of guy you want to challenge. If Dick Cheney said to this guy, "The order is to shoot that fucking plane out of the sky," that guy would have picked up the phone and said, "The order is to shoot the plane out of the sky." That would have been the end of it. There would have been no pushback. That is a direct order. That is an aggressive order. That is a logical order. That makes sense. If there is a plane inbound, shoot it. That's coming for the Pentagon. They're in the White House, but if it's coming for the Pentagon or the White House, shoot it down. That would make sense. The only way a young airman would question Dick fucking Cheney is if the order was so illogical that you literally had to ask for clarification because you couldn't believe what the order was in the first place. The only way that this scenario makes sense is if the order was, don't shoot it down, let it hit. Because then that guy would have said, are you sure the order still stands? To essentially do nothing, which is why Cheney said, has anything changed? The order still stands. It's the only explanation for that. I know that is contrary to what the general public or the general 9/11 community believes, and I get that, and I recognize this is a debatable topic, and that I could be wrong about this, but think of it that way. It has to be the only explanation, right? If you put yourself in that scenario, let me get this straight. Just to be clear, you want us to allow the plane to hit us. Did you hear anything to the contrary? Then the order still stands. Okay. Because here's the thing. What they said in that was that it was going to take 10 minutes for jets from Langley to be scrambled and to intercept the inbound plane. And according to policy for this, when you launch planes out of Langley, Virginia, and they are on a defensive mission to protect the homeland, logically speaking, they would be heading east out over the ocean, which is where the threat would be coming from, correct? Which is what they did. But the threat wasn't coming from the east. The threat was in the west, to the Pentagon, in the White House. So the jets took off east over the ocean before turning around and coming the other direction. And they would have been too late to shoot down an inbound aircraft to the Pentagon or to the White House or to whatever. Here's the thing. Dick Cheney knew, everybody probably in the POC knew, you didn't need to scramble jets to shoot down an inbound plane to the Pentagon. They have surface-to-air missiles at the Pentagon. They have their own air defense system. They could shoot it down if they wanted to. In fact, they would have shot it down if it had been an airplane. Of course, it wasn't an airplane that hit the Pentagon. It was a missile. But the idea that they would need to that the only way you could stop an inbound 747 from hitting the Pentagon would be to scramble jets from Langley or Andrews Air Force Base, which for some reason had no jets there, geographically closer, didn't have any jets there. The idea that the only way you could prevent an inbound plane from hitting the Pentagon would be if you scrambled military fighter jets and shot it down before it got there, that's incorrect, because the Pentagon has a missile defense system and the Pentagon would have shot it down in advance, which is the reason why the order was to stand down. Recordings of the 9/11 calls to NORAD, some of them are still classified, if that tells you anything. NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command. That's the patrolling the radar, the skies over North America, right? They see anything coming and going. Must have been on a breakfast break. Must have been at Starbucks that morning and missed these planes that flew wildly off course for an hour. Moving on. Let's move on to something else, right? So there's a couple other continuity of government contingency role-playing exercises that we saw. Do you remember Jade Helm, 2015? Do you remember that one? That freaked everybody out. They were training for a COG situation with troops on the street. Do you remember when they were interviewing the guy? I mean, it wasn't like a secret mission or anything like that. It was done by the U.S. Army Special Operations Command. It was like the news knew it was going on. They interviewed some people, and I remember they interviewed a guy, a military guy. I don't remember what his rank was, but they interviewed him. They said, "What are you doing in this drill? What are you guys simulating?" He said, "Well, we're simulating that we're going to round up some terrorists, domestic terrorists, constitutionalists." And you go, constitutionalists? Those are the terrorists in this fictional role-playing scenario in 2015. The terrorists, the domestic terrorists that you're going to round up are constitutionalists, and this is a problem. People that believe in the Constitution are the enemy, and you're training and role playing for it. Okay, interesting. Yeah, interesting. I mean, boy, if I didn't know any better, I'd think that you guys were laying the groundwork to know what to do on another event. Oh, let's talk about January 6th, 2021, shall we? Because it created the opportunity for the government to declare a state of emergency. Did you know that? Which bypasses Congress and allows for decisive action to be taken. So this belief that we don't want that we don't want a state of that emergencies are bad, and that we somehow want to kind of move away from these state of emergencies. No, we the people want to get away from emergencies, be they real or imagined, of course, but the government does not. The government is actively trying to figure out new ways to create emergencies. I said that we would end with kind of where we are now and what we have to look forward to. Well, we dodged a little bit of a bullet, but my guess is that bullet might look a little bit like a boomerang and come back and get us at some point. But let's talk a little bit about the World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty, because this is like medical continuity of government. And it wasn't approved, but we all know it's going to come back in some form or fashion with a different name on it. World Health Organization might have to... I don't know. They might have to bring in somebody else and disguise it and make it look like they're not running it. But keep your eyes on it, because this is an idea that's so brilliant, diabolical, of course, but it's so brilliant that they're going to figure out a way to dust it off. Think of it like this. It's, the United Nations would finally get their wish of world government, but it wouldn't come in the form of world government where everybody's flying the UN flag, the UN flat earth flag, by the way. If you've ever looked at the UN's flag is a flat earth divided into 33 spots, just so you know. But it wouldn't be the UN flag in the form of a world government. It would be world governance under the laws, under the medical directive of the World Health Organization, which is a category, which is a subset of the United Nations. So what they would do, and this is why I say it's brilliant, is that they would say, we've always wanted to get this world government thing going. We want to get everyone under the same policies, under the same government. It's like, well, do you really want to get them under the same flag? Because that seems unrealistic. But what if you got them under the same government laws, same policies, right? Well, how would we do that? Because everyone views the world differently. Well, what if they were all scared to death of a virus? What if we got them so scared that they were all going to die from some sort of medical situation that they didn't turn over their sovereignty to another government? That would be crazy for one government to allow another government to, or even NATO or someone like that to take control. I mean, that'd be a bridge too far. But what if it was about your health? What if the World Health Organization, because they're about the world and your health, what if they took over? Temporarily, of course. They promised to give the power back, wink, wink, as soon as the pandemic is done. Well, is the pandemic done? Well, here's the thing. They're never done. They're never over. There is no finish line. You give the power to the World Health Organization, and it is Emperor Palpatine. I will give these powers back once order is restored to the galaxy. Guess what? Order is never restored to the galaxy, and he retains those powers. And the government and the World Health Organizations of the world, the groups that are part of that, they would never give up that power. And so it would be a soft form of world government. It would be world governance. And that's different, but it's probably more realistic in terms of getting you there. I don't need everybody, doing the same thing, speaking the same language. I just need everybody to adhere to the same policies. And the way to do that is through fear. And the best way to get everybody universally fearful is to tell them that there's an invisible enemy that's coming to kill them. Now, terrorism works pretty well, but the problem is in the Middle East, you can't get them to believe that the terrorist boogeyman are going to get them because they've been branded as the terrorist boogeyman. But when you've got a virus, now the virus is nobody's fault. It just happens. Nobody can be blamed. Nobody's the bad guy for this. It's just the thing that happened. So you can just throw your hands up and go, we're just trying to save the planet. This bad. Of course, we know it's all contrived. But again, the story, the narrative is that it's nobody's fault that COVID broke out, but it's everybody's problem. And therefore we have to fix the problem. And by the way, global problems require global solutions, namely global governance. And so this is where we get into things where they start talking about, the World Health Organization starts talking about the possibility of what they call waves of emergencies. It's never ending. They're never giving the power back. There's going to be waves of emergencies. I've lived at the beach. For many years, I've lived at the beach. You know what I've noticed about waves? They always come. They never stop, right? So if you are thinking that we are going to get ourselves in a situation where there are waves of emergencies, just understand the terminology that they chose for that. Never ending. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about some of these code names for these. They're running simulations again, as you know, it's, for continuity of government laws, where the military takes control of it, where there's no constitution. There's Octagon, Freejack, and Zodiac, right? These are the names of these the code names for these COG laws. We've got Con Plan 3400. This is the plan for Homeland Defense. We have Con Plan 3500, which is defense support of civil authorities with military assisting in the emergency. And we've got Con Plan 3600, which is straight up military operations in the nation's capital region and continuity of government. The thing about the role-playing exercises for 3400 and 3500 is that they talk about homeland defense. They talk about when the military gets involved and that they will be assisting in the emergencies in defensive support of the civil authorities, meaning this is the military will be there to help out, but they're not running the show. But when you get to Con Plan 3600, they're less clear with their intentions. They're intentionally more vague. And they say that the military will take over operations in the nation's capital region and impose continuity of government. And so the follow-up question is, what does that look like? And the answer is those plans are top secret. So we don't know. But in these scenarios that in these fictional scenarios that they role play and plan out, some of the things that they talk about are food shortages, riots, and civil disobedience. So we got that to look forward to. And of course, we see these simulations that are sort of continuity of government adjacent, which would be Rockefeller Lockstep, Event 201, SPARS. These are role-playing exercises that show a catastrophe. With Lockstep, it's an outbreak. With Event 201, with all of them, it's outbreaks, and medical outbreaks. And what the response will be from a media standpoint, what it will be from a messaging, political messaging standpoint, scientific messaging standpoint, what they're going to want how they're going to want the people to feel. So in all these role-playing exercises, they get into the weeds of this is what's happened. This is the reaction by the general public, and then in the end, this is what the response should be, right? Or this is what the response can be. In Rockefellers, it's like in Lockstep, it's like the response will be a greater role for NGOs and a blending of charity. Charities get out of control, private interest in charities, meaning like they're like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, things like that, groups like that. They're talking about how charities and the government basically blend together. It's wild shit. I don't know if you've ever read the Rockefeller Lockstep from 2010. You should check it out. It's crazy. They're at the end, their recommendation, because it's Rockefeller thing. The recommendation, surprisingly, is that more Rockefeller control. I know that's a shock, but they said that they needed to control the the messaging. So let's wrap up with this. We'll talk just a little bit about what the future is, the future of continuity of government, right? Because we know it's not going away. As a concept, there's nothing inherently wrong. Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea of continuity of government. There's something inherently wrong with government. Let's start there, okay, at the root of it. But considering if you have a government, right, and you've agreed that you are going to operate under that structure, then the idea of having a plan, a backup plan, in case something happens to that government is not that far-fetched, all right? That's not a wild conspiracy theory that you would want to have a backup plan. And like I said, there's nothing inherently wrong with that if you take the fact that it's a government out of the equation. So having a backup plan is not a bad thing. Role-playing and getting better in event that things happen, that's also not a bad thing either, right? So the fire department practices putting out fires, right, so that they're better at it. It doesn't. Now, if the fire department was going to your house and lighting your house on fire so that they could then practice putting it out, we would have a problem, okay? And that's what the American government does. So we definitely don't like it when they when they have to create the events themselves afterwards, and they role play COVID and then they go out and create COVID. So we're gonna have to start to think about the concept of a digital continuity of government, right? We're in a digital world. That's the next logical thing, right? We have to ask the question: what happens if an event kicks off and COG is put into place? What does that look like? So the response in 1976 is going to look a lot different than the response in 2026. So what's the relationship with the internet? What are we going to do about the satellites? What are we going to do about geofencing? Do they implement 15-minute cities? Like, what is the answer to this? I guess it depends on what the question is, right? I guess it depends on what the scenario is, but the digital side of things is going to become more relevant. They tip their hands as well with the World Health Organization, the pandemic treaty that didn't wind up getting approved, but eventually will come back. You can see from their work there that that's how they intend to do it. It's viruses, it's medical, it's something that way. It seems like that's going to be the avenue that they pick. They may use. They may go asteroids on us or whatever, but it definitely climate change at some point. But why not all of them, right? I mean, we can see them prepping the groundwork for bird flu, right? We can see that they are that they're looking at another avian virus, right? This has been in their plans. They have been talking about avian viruses for 40 years. All right, so they're really hung up on that. No doubt it'll be bird flu related, right? So that's in the future. Continuity of government due to climate change. Picture it. I mean, you're going to possibly see it. That's got to be on the table, right? They're thinking of. I'm not because it's real, not because it's actually a threat, but again, it doesn't matter if it's actually a threat. Can they use it as the pretext to remake society, to take away your controls? If they can, they will. So, I mean, even as you start to move into these more obscure ideas and concepts that constitute emergencies, like hate. You know what I mean? Like, we had to declare a state of emergency for hate. And you go, is it hate speech? Right? We had to declare a state of emergency on hate speech against Israel. Oh, is that because everybody woke up one day and decided to be anti-Semitic? Or is it because Israel's behavior is hateable? So again, you're going to find that these continuity of government ideas are going to, like, in your mind, it's, what do we do if an asteroid hits, right? Continuity of government. What do we do if there's a 9.0 earthquake right under Washington, D.C., and the entire Capitol gets leveled? Well, I'll tell you what they do. They move it to Denver, which is where I am. Because the second capital of the United States, the secret second capital of the United States, the continuity of government has been set up in Denver. Underground, which is why when you come to the Denver airport, you get all kinds of fun stuff because that's part of it. Oh, I should take you guys on a tour of the Denver airport one day. They've taken down all the really creepy paintings that used to be up there in the main concourse. But they were very real. They still have the gargoyle in the baggage claim. They still have the gargoyle up top that's coming out of the suitcase, and it doesn't say anything except like once every 30 minutes it says something, and if you're standing right next to it, it'll freak you out. Because there is like a voice. There's like a voice. I mean, I'm just saying, if you ever swing through Denver, there's some nonsense going on at the airport. But you know that. So the future. Listen, one of the things I will say about the continuity of government push moving forward, whether the government is taking place in Washington D.C. or it's taking place underground in Denver, is that in order for this to really take hold, in order for you to get the best bang out of your butt, in order for your continuity of government operation to work, you have to have the messaging down. And here is the Achilles heel of this operation for them, is that nobody trusts the mainstream media anymore. Maybe your grandmother does, but the vast majority of people the ratings reflect it. I mean, sure, it's like information junk food. There's a lot of people that'll sit down on their couch, turn on the TV, turn on the news, and there's news there. Are they getting their news from just that source? Not anymore. They're getting it from a variety of places. So if we want to take some look at the bright side of this, is that if you're going to run a continuity of government massive scam like this, where you scare the shit out of the general public, you have to have the media on board. You have to have them. Now, the media would be on board with this. I'm not saying that they would have some sort of moral objection to this. It's not that. The media would most definitely be on board. That's what they're there for. The problem is that they just don't have the cachet that they used to. They don't have the credibility. Nobody listens to Jake Tapper. Nobody is scared of what Rachel Maddow says, except people that are just stuck. So I guess the good news in a situation like this is that some of the apparatus that is needed in order to sell these lies of fear is breaking down, because that media component is going away. So that's a good thing. But listen, I tell you what, with regard to all of this stuff, continuity of government, COVID, all these simulations that they run, I think it's important for people to understand this just something that you need to know as a concept, because if you know this, the world seems to make a lot more sense. If the rules don't apply during an emergency, they will create endless emergencies to justify the rules not applying. If you like this episode, you can take the additional step right now of sharing it with your friends and family. The website, macroaggressions.io. You can follow me on Twitter @macroaggressions. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you again soon.